We are back for part three of this conversation series on why we need doula support rather than fixing support, let's say. And so I'm going to talk a bit about my journey here today and what it was like to be, I don't know, I guess what brought me to um, this realization that like doula support was what we needed for every threshold of life, and that we strayed so far in our self-help and fixing energy. So I mentioned in a previous conversation that I had like this point of horribleness that happened, that sort of began my healing journey, let's call it. I wish I had different words from that because I don't love that terminology, but let's call it that. And so, as I mentioned, like what happened, and then I landed on a therapist couch. I was in grad school at the time. Um, and I then went to the Adult Children of Addicts support group, and I went like every night. There were virtual meetings. It was COVID, so I went like every night. And then from there, I was like reading newsletters and then found other folks in other healing modalities. I'm also, yeah, I mean, there's just like, and at some point I had a spreadsheet of all of the things I had tried, all of the people I had tried it with, all the things I wanted to try in the future, all of my shadow words, all of the books I had read, and I was tracking everything and, maintaining my meditation streak. I did like a 5-year meditation streak on the meditation app. I had affirmations everywhere. I still have some, and had some like practices. And I realized that I was in this trap that I'm almost always in of trying to like optimize everything in every minute. So it's like, okay, if I'm going on a walk, I can listen to this meditation. And if I'm going to do this, I can listen to this and da, 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 da. And I was trying to hack my way out sort of the discomfort I was in rather than like actually let that discomfort be discomfort. Um, and ask it what it wanted to teach me. And I was like frantic during that whole time of like, once I fix this, things will be better. And then, oh, I can fix this. And I was very sellable to, I almost want to use the word like gullible. Like I believed, all of the promises made on the internet, all of the cute little canvas squares telling me that like this was the thing, right? And none of it was, because it was actually feeding into my ability to one, punish myself. I found it like I was coming out of a life of constant chaos. It had been chaotic since the moment I was born and well before the moment I was born and for generations before. And there was a sense of like relative stability in my life. I had my first like job that had like benefits and some stability. I was living in New York City at the time. I had a great community. And so like there was this like evening out in my life. And the nervous system that was only used to chaos and disruption and all of these things became like the thing that I could do to keep myself adrenalized and filled with chaos was to constantly dysregulate myself with healing, or what I was calling healing at the time. And I think it was maybe a necessary part in the step if we're going to, or like step in the process if we're going to say all things led me to where I am now. But it was an incredibly painful time and really self-absorbed time. I was obsessed with fixing myself, obsessed with doing all of these things. I didn't even sometimes feel like myself in conversations. I was like, basically having scripted conversations, which is just such an unkind way to interact with people. And yeah, it was really a vibe. And then sort of, um, well, a lot happened at once. Though like there wasn't chaos in other forms of my life, I had that stability I mentioned, the great community. I was still really good at having chaotic romantic relationships. And I was in a really terrible situationship, and let it go on for too long and was treated terribly, and that fell apart. And that like further, then gave me more to like bruises to push on to be like, this thing about me, let this keep happening, and this thing about me, let this keep happening. And I was pretty miserable and not like really healing. I think I got some tools along the way. Certainly there were a lot of like gateways of things that moved me from one thing to the other. It just became like a regimen, and like I wasn't even in it, like I wasn't embodied in it. I was just like, do this and then this and then this and then this and then like, all right, where's the thing I want? Where's, the life I'm hoping for? And like During that time, like pretty early on in that time, I became a birth and postpartum doula. And this for me is very ancestral. My great grandmother was put in a boarding school, as were many Indigenous children. And she became like this pillar of Indigenous teachings when like after she was in the boarding school as a student, became a teacher at one, which is really rare. I mean, she's just an absolute badass in every way, shape, and form. She actually has a book called Essie's Story. Yeah, if you want to learn more about her. Growing up, she provided a lot of teachings to me and, talked about the importance of birth and things like this and of, Indigenous ways of knowing. And so I kind of always knew I'd become a doula. And so I became a doula in that time, and it was something I did here and there. I still had full-time work. And that's still true. I'm not a full-time birth or postpartum doula. It's something that I, have a client or so each month, maybe 10 a year. Uh, and I deeply love the work, and it's not the only work that I do. And it took some years of doing birth and postpartum doula before I realized that, like, wait, everything is birth work. Everything is like life is filled with these thresholds, and every threshold should have a doula holding the person across of it. That could be change, that could be birthing a big creative work, that could be, oh my goodness, so many things. Divorce, Saturn return, career shift, all these things. And, this is at the time when a lot of people were starting online businesses of, they were coaching, and I'd look and I was like, this is not, coaching isn't what we need. We don't need to be told what to do. We don't need, that sort of eagle eye view on our life saying, do this, tweak that. What we really need is the presence that a doula holds, which is what I, hold for people, and other doulas do too, and other, non-official doulas, I don't even really believe there's such a thing as an official doula, do in holding challenging conversations and just having that deep presence, and when I work with people who are giving birth, the first thing we always do is some birth mapping. And when I work with people in connection doula who are not birthing, but are maybe going through a transition or crossing a threshold or trying to, birthing a creative process, we do some threshold mapping. And the reason that we do that is because my truest belief and knowledge that I have from years of this work is that every individual is the expert in what they need to be well and in what they need to be resourced and grounded. And so our job is not to teach them anything or introduce things that are like out of left field or something. Our job is to sit and witness who they are, the tools that they have, when they feel most like themselves, the magic that they carry, the medicine that they carry, and then just like bringing that to light and bringing that into this transformation and having it be a deep part of the transformation and of whatever change they're going through, be it birth or death or grief or identity change, things like that. And so I found that this in expanding, the idea of what a doula can do to has really like I feel like when I feel it in my clients all the time when I talk with them about it, like their shoulders go down and the sense of release and opening happens because we all have this exhaustion of the constant self-surveillance and improvement, right? And this self-fixing obsession has its tentacles so deep in our bodies that we're punishing ourselves with them. And also we can they're sneaky, right? Because they're so deep and inward that they can disguise themselves as something that's really helping us, but really they're just, another surveillance mechanism. And bless them for that, right? Like they're trying to keep us safe and on par with others. But when we actually let them go and find the ends of those tentacles, we can leave this fixing mindset and these cycles of shame that we get in when it's like always that searching and finding. And that certainly is what happened to me, and it kept me really stuck in that, like being able to almost like punish myself, something that I was like hooked on, I couldn't stop. And so it was a slow realization that these things I was doing were like not healing me. They were adrenalizing me. They were stressing me out. They were just serving a sneaky ego purpose that was tricking me out of the transformation that I actually needed to go through. And I think one of the most powerful things in the world is to be present at a birth and time again, just witnessing that and the postpartum thereafter and holding people in that transformation and keeping us away from the idea of going back to how things were, but instead what's possible in this time forward. And, it's just these sort of this slow unraveling of realizing that, oh, I deserve this type of care too, of, being able to transform and desiring that for myself and being held in community. And like, these are the things that are going to hold our world together and allow us to get through this really challenging collective moment that we're in right now. And I realize that it's where our ultimate strength is. There's a reason why, the capitalism and others have tried to keep us at that surface level self-help get better and not into this deep transformational change of recognizing how powerful we are, how powerful grief is, how interconnected we are, and how we have to be held in these moments, and that it isn't an individual job, it's a collective job to sort of unravel and come into wholeness together. And yeah, and it's been a real awakening. Every time that I work with a client, I learn more about the ways that I am not allowing myself to be held and vice versa. And I think the more that people who have had my doula care for their be it their divorce or their book or something, they then become, more of a doula in the lives of others. And it's really this reckoning. And when we sense that deep, deep power of it, we realize like, oh, this is why whoever they are, been trying to keep us from this embodiment of this power because it's so, so powerful. And I think this is something that becomes natural over time or has for me. Like, I am in a committed partnership and every time, and our whole, I think in a lot of ways, part is dueling for each other, challenging conversations and changes and things. Excuse me. I'm a yawner as a down regulator. So like the more like comfortable or relaxed I am, I yawn. And so it's not of boredom or anything, but just to show how deeply embodied this conversation is. Yeah. And so I think the first time I experienced that being held was by other doulas and watching that care from afar and realizing like, oh, we all need this care. At every part of our lives. And I'm somebody who's just been incredibly, incredibly lucky in my life with great friends and seeing how they too have held me in ways that have allowed me to like look and reflected back to me in ways that have looked beyond that surface level I was trying to stay at by constantly trying to fix myself and into the depths of like being seen. And I think when someone reflects back to you, what they see in you is when you realize like, if they're not staying up here, like I can't stay up here, I have to come down. And something else is that both I work at birth and death, and as you know, everything in between. And particularly birth and death showed me that transformation isn't linear. And that there's a cycle in life. Of course, there's many cycles, but there's many spirals in between the birth and death. And in some ways, many of us believe, we die many times in life and come back. And all of this was around. And so, this idea that I was on when I was up here in the self-help world of ticking boxes and trying to meet milestones and things isn't true to how transformation really happens. And it had to go to there's different shapes in the depths, right? There's different shapes and changes. And some people say a spiral or things like that. And it's, all these shapes might be true, but it's like what it really is almost like a force field of possibilities down here, and when you go there, you just see all that transformation wants of us. And it's not just as, two people giving birth will have two very different experiences and outcomes. And milestones they meet along the way that'll look very different. And death is the same. That's true for all the changes in our life and all the transformation in our life. And yeah, and so I just learned so much from people as when I was just a birth and death doula before I expanded into connection doula. And it's this birth and death taught me to trust the wisdom of difficult processes and really trust people to go. There's this moment in birth and death as well, where you watch the person either giving birth or the person passing to the other side, sort of go inward and almost like shake hands with what's to come, with the challenging reality, with transformation. They really go in and they have a meeting with transformation and come back out. And so, who would I be to direct that experience? I haven't met transformation in that way, but I'm there to support someone as they do what only they can do. Just as the person giving birth is the only person who can bring that child earthside, you going through a transformation of any kind, you're the only person who can bring yourself to the other side or come out on the other side. And so what you need is not direction, or interference with that in any way, but being held in that mess and being knowing that there are signposts along the way that you are cared for and that you can trust yourself and that you fostered that trust and you have plans for that trust. And the relief of that is so deep and like visceral. And, there's still moments where I feel like I'm fighting myself or trying to hack my way into greatness or something. But there's nothing like that feeling of stopping fighting yourself and allowing yourself to just be seen and held and just sort of melt back and be like, okay, change. Okay, transformation. Okay, threshold. What do you want from me? What are you asking of me? Who will I be on the other side? And once you start asking that question, once we will approach thresholds with curiosity, there's something so enticing about it of like you're in this dialogue of who will I be and what might it be like and what might it feel like and things like that. And all these things that have felt scary or closed off by the self-help world, when we actually get into them, you realize that it's like delicious down there. And there's so much, I often talk about like that I am someone I really believe that I have had incredibly horrific experiences in my life. And over my years of healing, I've like gone in and turned on all of the lights in all the darkest parts of myself that I thought were too scary to approach. And none of it is as scary as avoiding it. And that's just true. And nothing is more ruinous of life or damaging to life than to not turn those lights on and see what's there and go into that like portal of what's possible. I wonder, I was going to say, I don't know what happened to the spreadsheet I had where I was tracking all of that. I'm sure it's around, and I think there is something incredibly magical in making a great spreadsheet and keeping lists of things. But it's all to say that, this over years of being a doula and expanding my practice more and more, I've started to see that there's nothing in life that doesn't need a doula. Change needs doulas, and life is change. And it's just like deeply an honor to hold people in that, and deeply honorific of yourself to have somebody there to hold you in it so that you can really look in that mirror and be like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. Only I know how to do this. Only I am the expert in this. Here we go. So that's a bit of my story. It was certainly a winding road, certainly something that asked a lot of me and had a lot of trial and error and still does all the time. And there's still things that I do not want to be witnessed in, that I ask myself to be witnessed in, and all of these things. But that's the beauty of doula work, is that it's just a holding and then allowing a process to unfold. Like you can't make a birth happen in any sort of way. It just has to happen as it's going to happen, as a co-creation with the person coming earthside and the person giving birth and their ancestors and everyone else. And that's true for, if you have a big creative project coming, you're in co-creation with the project as well. The project is another entity. Or if you're having a breakup or a Saturn return, you're in a relation with another person or another planet and you're co-creating what it's like to separate in a way or change in a way. So it's just allowing that to be true sets the rest of life free. And it's like, sounds like the big scary thing, but as soon as we turn the light on, we realize it's not the big scary thing. The scarier thing is like building a life around the dishonesty of turning away from it and thinking we can like surface level hack our way through what needs to be witnessed. So this is the third conversation in the series. The fourth and final is next, and it's about expanding the idea of doula care. And I've talked a little bit about it in this one, but I think doula care is very often attributed to birth and maybe death and abortion and other things. And so what does it mean to see life as a series of like really sacred thresholds? So I will see you there.